if that went right or not.
Yeah, it looks like we're live on Facebook.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm obviously not Amanda, and you're going to have to bear with me because I'm also not as technologically proficient as Amanda is at these things. But I have with me the most amazing Amy Stewart. She's going to be helping us discuss mental health and self-care. I am with Long Haulers, the COVID-19 Long Haulers discussion group. Amy is with the COVID Survivors for Change. Is that correct? Yes.
Yep.
A wonderful support group doing wonderful things. And a lot of you have probably already found your way in there because I understand there are quite a few long haulers who just absolutely love the support of your groups. So thank you for that. And thank you for being here. Amy, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and we'll get started?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me. I've been here before, so this is a community I'm very familiar with. And like Donna said, I know many of you join us on Thursday nights for our weekly support group, COVID Connections. If you don't know, last night was our first run of separating the group into a bereaved group on their own Zoom link and a long haulers group on their own Zoom link. And so that's a change for us. And so I wanted to let everybody know that certainly if you want to join us on Thursday nights, we do we will continue with our didactic presentations where I will do a short 15-20 minute presentation on a topic. What's a little bit different now is that I can get more tailored to long haulers and the things that are of interest and in things that they need. So just wanted to let everybody know that. Amanda, last time I was here, which was great, Amanda mentioned that there might be opportunities for me to come back because, you know, the truth is any discussion about mental health can be pretty vast. Mental health is a short term for a lot of things. And so self-care is something that Amanda felt like comes up quite a bit in the discussion group that you all have on Facebook. And it's something that I love talking about because it's something that we all need and we need to engage and practice, but it is really elusive, particularly if you are living with chronic illness. Something I always like to let you all know too, because I think this is important. I live with rheumatoid arthritis, and I was actually diagnosed after a bout with the measles when I was in my 20s. So while I don't have long COVID, and I'm not trying to compare, this is not a hierarchy, but I do want you all to know that I've had moments in my life where I've had flares, and I've dealt with things. When I hear your questions and I look at you all having conversations, there's a lot of similarities. So my plan is part of this discussion is kind of to take that knowledge and share what I've learned too. I don't know if it will be helpful to everyone or resonate with everyone, but I do think that living with a chronic illness for 30 years, there's definitely some things I've learned along the way. So I'm going to share my screen because I have a short presentation that I wanted to share with you.
Okay.
And this is specific to chronic illness and long COVID. And I'm going to start the conversation just talking about what self-care is. Self-care is another one of those terms like mental health, where it's a short term that can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And I recently did a presentation for COVID Connections, and when I was doing my research, I thought it was interesting that the roots of self-care are really in the world of advocacy and civil rights. So I thought that was interesting. And it came about because the advocates in their work, because advocacy is personal for most people, i.e. you are advocating and you are pushing for legislative change on an issue that is important to you because you've been impacted. A lot of advocates found that in their work, they were becoming fatigued and exhausted. And so real encouragement among advocates to take care of oneself in order to keep the work moving forward. And I kind of think that we're all advocates in our own lives, in our own ways. So self-care is appropriate for all of us. We hear a lot about engaging in self-care. And I think when you're living with chronic illness, hearing about it can be fatiguing and exhausting in and of itself because it's so hard to do. What self-care is by definition are those things that we do to take care of our physical well-being and our mental health. There are a lot of different ways to look at it. I do like the Self-Care Foundation, their approach. And they do, I put the website. In fact, I sent this to Amanda, and she can also post this presentation for you to have at a later date if you wanted to reference anything. But they create what they call the 7 pillars of self-care. And it's a way to kind of think about it. One pillar is knowledge and health literacy, which I think is really important for this group in particular. I know that you all know your bodies better than anyone, and that you all are creating a body of knowledge about long COVID that the medical community doesn't have. So you're learning from one another and through your own experiences and bringing that to the medical community. Hopefully the medical community, and I think that they've done a lot of work to get there, but at some point you both will meet. I don't think we're completely there yet, though. Then there's the mental well-being and your mental health. That's another pillar of self-care. Physical activity, and this one is really tough for you all because many of you have a hard time getting around. Many of you are immobile due to oxygen saturation rates, or have a hard time mobilizing because of neurological issues, things like that. So that's not lost on me. I just want you to know that physical activity is one of those important aspects of self-care. Healthy eating, risk avoidance or mitigation. What that means is, there's a lot of things to do in self-care that promotes well-being, but there are a lot of things that we do to self-soothe or take care of ourselves in tough moments that may actually be riskier for our health. And so another pillar is, how do we look at those activities or those behaviors we engage in that actually might be harmful to us in the long run? And how can we avoid those risks or mitigate those risks in a way where we're cutting those things down? And then things like good hygiene is another bucket. Good hygiene helps to feed our bodies, but it also helps feed our mental health. So self-care from a medical perspective, I'm going to go, that's not a pillar that they created, but I'm going to give you another perspective so that you can look at self-care a lot of different ways and figure out what actually resonates the most with you, and really you can get behind it. Truth is, the idea of self-care is not new. I mentioned, a lot with the civil rights movement, we coined the term self-care, but it's not a new concept. We've been taking care of ourselves as human beings, for all time. Ancient civilizations did things to maximize their health and their healing. They had ritual. They ate and drank specific foods. All of these things to take care of themselves, predominantly because they didn't have modern medicine, right? So today, because we do have modern medicine, what you see is that some cultures engage in medical self-care due to lack of access to formal care. And that could be any of us here too, because we all know that access to medical care is something that many, if not most of us, deal with to some extent. There was a time period in our history here during the scientific era where we actually saw a shift from the ancient ideas and those rituals and those things that we passed down in eating and drinking. And we became more and more dependent upon the medical community. We became trusting of them, and they became the experts in how to take care of our bodies. And we saw the shift from our cultures and from us taking care of ourselves to really relying on the medical community to do that. And so some of our self-care kind of went out the window at that point. We really relied on the experts to guide our health. Now we're kind of seeing a shift back because we're seeing chronic illness on the rise. Mortality rates, we're living to be older and older. And so the truth is we're going to see more chronic illness as we age. And hopefully that will improve too over time. But with chronic illness, there's become a new investment in self-care. And again, that self-care includes the activities and the behaviors that we can engage in, but it's also having the knowledge around our bodies and around medical care and treatments that help us along the way. But anything is hard with chronic illness. I found this great article yesterday. I'm sorry, hold on 1 second. I'm gonna. Needed to clear my throat. I found this great article from a woman named Eileen Davidson, and she lives with rheumatoid arthritis and other chronic illnesses. And she wrote an article about how hard self-care is when you're living with a chronic illness that really prevents you from doing a lot of the things that we all think of as self-care. And what she said was it starts with self-love. And I thought, that's interesting. I want to read more about this. Self-care is aspirational. It's for many of us who are living with chronic illness, it's out there. Those are things we'd love to be able to do for ourselves, but we just can't physically do it. We don't have the mental stamina. We don't have the physical stamina. Those things feel like they are out of reach. So she recommends starting with self-love as the starting place and not at self-care. And she said self-love represents emotions and behaviors like these things. So one thing on her list is not listening to negative self-talk and replacing it with a positive. So the idea that I'm worthless, I'm a burden, I'm no good, etc., that comes with chronic illness. It's not listening to that. Easier said than done. I understand that. But you have to practice that positive self-talk, and replace those negative messages and tapes in your head. And resisting messages of the shoulds, the regret, and the guilt. For example, she talked about being a parent. I know many of you are parents, and your ability to parent in a way you would like to or that you used to has shifted. And for some of you, that is a great source of guilt and regret. And she talked about that. She said, the truth is I'm doing the best that I can in my new situation. I love my kids and they know that I love them. So resisting those messages, again, easier said than done. Recognizing your mistakes and being gentle with yourself. So we have a tendency to avoid things that feel painful or difficult for us. And sometimes we need to lean into them and just recognize them and not place a good and bad label on them, i.e., I'm a good person or I'm a bad person for making a mistake. I made a mistake. And I feel badly about that, but I'm going to be gentle with myself because I am doing the best that I can. Setting boundaries with yourself and others. That's emotional boundaries, that's time boundaries, that's physical. The truth is your bodies are probably putting those physical boundaries down for you. It's articulating those to the people around you that may be harder. And even hard with yourself. Some of you are probably really good at saying, I can't do it. I physically cannot do it. And yet others may actually push yourselves beyond physically what you should be doing. I just said the should word. I shouldn't say that, right? The should. But some of you may be pushing yourself. And I think challenging yourself on the one hand is actually good for you physically and mentally, but also really trying to work hard at figuring out where that sweet spot is. When have I pushed myself so far that I can't function for the rest of the week or the rest of the day? Emotional boundaries, i.e., there's people in your life, and maybe it's only one person, and that one person is awesome and really supportive of you. But other people you may have to really limit the time you spend with them or you talk to them because they're not making you feel good. And they are actually contributing to some of the negative self-talk or those shoulds, regret, guilt, all of those things. So finding out where those boundaries are and exercising those boundaries may be part of this process for you. Recognizing your value, you've changed, your life has changed, you've undergone a very traumatic event, a series of events in your life, and your body's different, your mind's different. That doesn't mean that you're not a valuable person. You have value. And part of the journey for you is creating new meaning in your life. That's going to look different for everyone, and the process is different from everyone. I also don't see creating meaning as a destination. We're constantly creating new meaning in our lives and a new narrative. Every day, we're a different person than we were yesterday. But you have to be intentional and be seeing the opportunities for that new meaning to come into your life. Giving your body what it needs to thrive. One of the things she talked about was those things that may be risky for you, some of those health behaviors. She talked about drinking too much or taking too much medication as a way to cope with some of her depression, her anxiety. And recognizing that is hurting her more than it's hurting or helping anyone else. So coming to that realization, not beating yourself up for it, not thinking you're a bad person for it, but really shifting into more of a mode of eating good nutrition, doing things that are good for your body, because that'll be good for your overall health and that mental health. And she says at the end, without self-love, I wouldn't be able to practice self-care. So that may be for you where you start, that the self-care practices, those things to do, may be too much for you, and starting one by one, those baby steps may help you get to your ability to actually practice the self-care things you'd like to practice. The next thing, if you start with that self-love piece, which I think is so important, because when we are diagnosed with a chronic illness and we start to feel badly about ourselves, our self-esteem can go down. Our feeling of value and worth in this world can go down. So starting at loving yourself and having compassion for yourself, those things take time and energy and practice. So that may be where you start, so that you can get to making sure you're tending to your basic needs. It doesn't mean that that's the order you have to go in, though, because sometimes tending to basic needs can actually kickstart us into other behaviors and other thought patterns that are helpful. So again, I'm giving you different ways to approach this, or different perspectives, so that you can figure out what's right for you. But what does it mean to tend to our basic needs? It means that we can tend to our home and our space. And this is a thing that I hear from people with long COVID, that it's like, I barely have the energy or the stamina or the breath to just pick up around me. Okay, well, that's good enough. Figuring out things that you can do and how far you can go, as opposed to what you can't do and how much you are not able to complete. When I mentioned that I had RA and I had a flare, really when the pandemic started, which was interesting timing. But my house was a mess. And I remember laying in bed and going, I can't even get up to walk. I was having a hard time walking at that point. And my bedroom, it had invaded my bedroom, this stuff. And I started feeling really oppressed about it and depressed about it. And I then had to take the attitude, I just can't do it right now. It'll get done. It's just not going to get done right now. And it may not get done for weeks. It may not get done for months. And it didn't. It did get done for months, but eventually it did. But that mental kind of switch between knowing what you can and can't do, that is hard. Feeding ourselves and our families, that could be tough too. So how can you cut corners How can you make faster meals? How can you engage others in your family if you can to help you cook? Can you do quick meals? Are there friends that might help you make? There are a lot of options out there to go through in your head, so that you are feeding yourselves better nutrition. Good hygiene, brushing your teeth every day, bathing when you can. Even if taking a shower is hard every day, well, how frequently can you do it so that you can feel refreshed and you can feel clean? Brushing your teeth once a day. If you can do it, if you can do that one thing, you've chosen one thing that you can move forward then and build on that. Taking your medications and engaging in healthcare if you can. I've talked to many of you who, and this might be a very good topic for another time, but engaging in healthcare is really defeating. You go and ask for help and you don't get the help that you need. And so why go back? That's I have had this conversation with somebody in particular where, she probably would benefit from going back if they would engage her, but they're not engaging her when she goes, so she's quit going. So I think for you all, the healthcare piece is huge and it can be really tough, and I want to acknowledge that. But do what you can, do what you can in a positive way and an active way. Movement, when we say exercise, I think we kind of equate that with getting up and walking 3 miles or running or doing something that is high cardio, high impact. For you all, movement may be walking across the room when you haven't been able to do that, or finding ways to move that feel safe, that you can do, that are not overly fatiguing, but continuing to move your body. When you stop moving, it makes it really hard to start moving again. Parenting, taking care of children, that is another topic that we may look at for future conversations, because that's huge. I know that we had a Mother's Day roundtable a couple of weeks ago before Mother's Day, and we've had several long haulers talk about how difficult that has been for them, and that their parenting has changed, and it's had to change. They don't have a choice. And then caregiving. If you are on the call and you are caring for an elderly parent or for a partner who has needs, that has changed for you too. So these are tending to basic needs, and the list itself, I'm sure, can feel overwhelming. But what is one thing that you can do and set your intention to do on a regular basis, whatever regular looks like for you? That's a start. Getting into some kind of routine. And I think that too, your routine obviously looks different than it did before you were sick. You had COVID, and your routine has changed, and perhaps you've gotten into a routine that works for you. What I do notice, and you all can attest to this, is that because chronic illness or an illness like long COVID, the symptoms ebb and flow. They change. It's not the same every day. And it may be the same for a week, but then it changes. I always kind of looked at it as, well, when is it going to be today? What's it going to be tomorrow? And as I started feeling better, the distance, got longer and longer. But initially, my routine was, what is my routine going to be today? And then when I started feeling a little bit better, okay, what is it going to be the next couple of days? And then I think, what is it going to be this week? Routine helps us. And it can be totally thrown out of whack when we've experienced a trauma, because trauma actually takes that feeling and that sense of control out of us. And so we have to build that sense again, and that takes time. And it can make us feel overwhelmed, particularly when physically and mentally we don't have the stamina to take care of things. But routines give us a sense of order. Our bodies like that. Our minds like that. Helps us feel grounded. And routines actually can help create that sense of normalcy when we are walking down unknown paths. Being sick is scary. It's because you don't know how you're going to feel tomorrow. You don't know how you're going to feel next week, in 2 weeks. I get that. And so if you can create some normalcy and some routine, it makes the stuff that we don't know easier to embark upon. When we tend to our physical, our emotional, our mental, our social and spiritual needs routinely, we can begin to balance our neurobiology. And what that means is, it's that mind-body connection. We tend to, in mental health, well, in medical realms too, we tend to separate our heads from our bodies. And the truth is, our brain is essential for our functioning. So they're connected. But if we can get into that rhythm, into that routine, we can support cognitive functioning, which can be really hard for many of you. That brain fog is real. And so if we can get into the routine and some practices that help our cognitive functioning, and we can rebuild some of those neural pathways, that can be helpful. And it can boost our overall health and provide meaning for us in our day. I don't know if you all have heard this. Many of you probably have. There's a book called How to Keep House While Drowning by Casey Davis. I really love it. She has provided and offered compassion and practical tips to taking care of these basic needs when you're grieving, when you're dealing with chronic illness, those kinds of things. And so she takes a lot of the labels out of it. Things aren't good and bad. They are what they are, and we can do what we can do. She describes care tasks as any task or chore or errand that is required to care for ourselves and keep our lives going. So when you break down the amount of time, energy, skill, planning, and maintenance that go into care tasks, we begin to see that they're not always simple or basic. You all probably have already learned this. Family and friends may not understand it, but you all know this. Even on the best of our days, taking care of it all is really challenging. So if we're learning to deal with the death of a loved one or chronic illness, they also are connected to shame. She talks a lot about the issue of shame that goes along with not being able to care for ourselves and do things for ourselves and take care of our loved ones and our families and our relationships. And so she developed her 6 pillars of struggle care. One is that care tasks are morally neutral. It doesn't make you a good person if you're getting everything done, and it doesn't make you a bad person if you're not. They're just things to do that help us in our lives, but that doesn't mean that we are good or bad as a result of being able to do them or not. And I think just working through that piece for many of you can be really helpful and work towards removing the shame from your situation. Rest is a right and it's not a reward. We have to have it in order to fill up our tank again, in order to do the things we want to do in the future. You deserve kindness regardless of your level of functioning. You can't save the rainforest if you're depressed, meaning if you're not taking care of yourself and your own mental health and your mental well-being, you can't save anyone else, and it will be very hard for you to take care of anyone else. Many of you in looking at self-care have heard the adage, when you're on an airplane, the reason they say put your mask on first and then help the person next to you is if you're not getting that oxygen, you're likely to pass out while you're trying to help the person next to you. So you've got to put the mask on first. Shame is the enemy of functioning. Shame is disabling, it's immobilizing, and it can actually freeze you in the space that you're at, and it will consume you. So if you can work through some of these other things, i.e. using the practice of self-compassion and self-love, a lot of the other stuff will be easier to engage in. And good enough, like I said, when I looked at my room, I was like, well, this is the way it is for now. It's good enough. It's perfect. Easier said than done, but I had to get to that space. So as something I also like to add, some of this is probably feels elusive because you're going to have to work through some things and process some things. coping, what can I put into place now? Pacing is something you can put into place now if you're not already doing it. And pacing is something that is used in physical rehab. And I put a link here that's the long COVID physio pacing page. It's got some really good tips. It's got some links to some toolkits and to some other resources that might be able to help you. But the idea of pacing is that you stop before you overdo it. And it really will help you be able to get more done physically. And what you do is you don't make plans or targets, but you take internal cues. So in other words, if you're a goal-oriented person and you've said, I am going to clean up 5 things today, that's not what you do. What you do is you get up and you go and you start doing things and you listen to your body, and your body's saying, you can do a little more, do a little more. Or your body's saying, you're done, then you're done. So you learn to listen to your body as opposed to listening to those goal settings that you have. It changes and it shifts things. And if you're goal oriented and you like to get boom, boom, boom done, it'll be harder for you in the beginning. But it does help you preserve and reserve some of that energy for those moments, those days where you are feeling better and you do have more energy and you can get more done. Then there's the idea of switching, which means you'll do different types of tasks, either the same day or in that week. So you do things that may take less energy than other things, and you flip them around. There may be activities for you that actually are harder for you. What I found for me was that I could sit in bed and fold clothes, and that was less energy exerting than going out to the kitchen and emptying the dishwasher and putting the dishes back in. So on the days where I felt like I wanted to get something done, I can fold the clothes, and I'm going to do it while I sit in bed. And then when I felt like I had more physical energy, I would go out and I would empty the dishwasher and load the dishwasher. So again, listening to your body about, well, what makes more sense given my energy level at this moment? And if you're hearing a theme of spoon theory, they do draw from spoon theory on these things, this practice. Using a diary or a tracker, really helpful. There are apps that you can use on your phone if if you like that stuff. If you like a good old journal and a pad of paper, just writing down and tracking how you're doing. What kind of energy levels you have, what your body's telling you. Again, resisting the idea of moving into goal setting. Using a heart monitor, it's almost like using a biofeedback tool to help tell you how are you doing physically if you're not able to hear those internal cues yet. And it could be too, your body may crap out on you and you think you're feeling fine, and your body's like, nope, you can't do this anymore. Those types of monitors can be really helpful to monitor that. I suspect too, and I've heard this from some of you, is that you get used to your new normal, and so your sat rates may be a certain way, and you're getting used to them being lower. And then when you put your pulse oximeter on, you're like, oh, whoa, I'm way lower than I thought I was. So things like that might be helpful to have as tools to monitor you. And then you increase your activity as you're ready to do that. So it's going to go up and down. You're going to turn the knobs back and forth on yourself to see what you can and cannot do. It's not used as a therapy or therapeutic intervention to make changes. What it is, though, is it's a tool that you can use to help you in and out of your days, and can even be used in tandem with things that you want to do to improve your self-care. So you can even incorporate some of these pacing ideas in self-care activities. I do want to include some information about relationships, because I know that many of you in your Q&A that Amanda sent me talked about relationships. And the truth is, talking about self-care without talking about other people is really hard because we don't live in a vacuum. We don't live on islands. So self-care is relational. And this was written by a psychologist I found on Psychology Today. I thought, spot on. He says, do you celebrate yourself enough? Probably not. Do you take care of yourself enough? Probably not. Does your partner encourage you to take care of yourself enough? Probably not. And why is that? Because in relationships, there's no such thing as self-care, right? So there is a lot of push and pull in the relationships that you have. Some of you have very supportive family members, partners, kids, parents, friends, and some of you don't. And I know that to be true. And then some of you have a mixture of, when things started, there were a lot of people there for me, and I got a lot of support, and a lot of that has gone by the wayside. So the truth is, our relationships with chronic illness, they ebb and they flow. And one of the things, in fact, I didn't put this point on her slide, the self-love slide. One of the things the Eileen Davidson said, I'm going back to that self-love slide in her article. She talked about being alone and she learning how to be alone. And one of the comments under that was, she does spend more time alone than she did before she got sick. Partially because she may not physically be able to do some of the things that engage socially, but partially because people have left her life. And that has been painful for her. But she's also learned, I can be okay and satisfied on my own. And that is something that you all may have to also learn or walk through and explore what that's been like for you. Self-care is relational. And even in the best of times when you're feeling good, partners, family members, friends, they may not understand some of the boundaries that you've put down for yourself to take care of yourself. They may want you to do things that you don't want to do. You may want to spend your time doing certain things that take time away from them. And that's where some of the conflict comes in. So self-care is always relational, regardless of whether you're dealing with your chronic illness or not. Your chronic illness adds another layer onto that. So how do we master self-care with others? To begin with, something that you can begin with is to sit down and say, I want to create a self-care plan. I want you to resist the goal setting, though, when you're doing that. It's more of what can I do to take care of myself? Or what am I doing now to take care of myself, if anything at all? Reflect on your history, your self-care history. What did I used to do? What did my family teach me to do to take care of myself? Maybe it was nothing. Maybe the idea of self-care in your family was, that you don't take care of yourself, that's selfish. What about your workplace? What about your other family members, friends? What about your community? What historically have you done, and what have you seen modeled for you by way of self-care? Have conversations with, and you're going to have to communicate with your partner, your kids, or other family members, your friends, remembering that self-care is relational. If you are happier and healthier, they'll be happier and healthier. Now, healthier looks different for you than it used to. Healthier looks different for you than it does people who are not living with chronic illness. So part of that communication might be, this is what healthier and happier looks like for me, given what I'm dealing with. And tell them how these things are important to you. Hey, I'm learning how to pace. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to learn how to listen to my body, and I would really love your support in my pacing activities. That may be an example of a conversation you could have. And prepare for resistance. You are trying to make some changes in your own life and with your own self-care, and that may be hard for other people to understand or see. You may be the helper in your family or the caregiver in your family. I suspect many of you are and have been. And so not being able to caregive, not be able to be there for them has been a change for them too. And to put on top of that, you want to spend some time and energy in focusing on you. And that might even take them aback. It's okay. Just expect that and prepare for that. And then reciprocate to the extent that you can, understanding that, we need more from people around us when we're sick. I think there was at one point, because I was sick for almost 2 years, and my husband was getting worn out. I could see it in him. And I thought, I gotta let some stuff go too, and not have expectations of him, because I'm wearing him out. He's having to cook more. He's having to clean more. He's having to come home from work to help me get around the house. How can I reciprocate his need for self-care, and in a way that we both can live with, and we can balance this out? It does feel like when you are living with chronic illness, you're constantly recalibrating your balance, your weights, right? This week I feel like I can do this. Next week I can't do this. How do we recalibrate? And it's not just you recalibrating it, it's everyone around you. So stepping back and recognizing that too. Also be aware, a lot of this is self-awareness. How is my environment impacting my well-being? Our environment may be very small right now. It could be our bedroom. It could be our house. It could be our small community. Some of you are working. There's a lot of different environments that we need to consider, how they influence our moods, how they impact our behavior to act and our motivations to act, how it can facilitate or discourage interactions, create or reduce stress. I mentioned my bedroom, and that was, that's hard when you can't get around and pick things up and straighten things up and clean the way you want to, because our environments do impact the way we feel. And if things around us are piling up, what can we do then to help the immediate environment that we are in be in a state where we feel like we've got the ability to reduce our stress levels, our moods, all of those things? I don't know what the answer is for you, but that may be something that you have to think about, is how can I make this immediate space cleaner or less cluttered or better for me, to where I can live in this room, in this house, in a way where it's not making me feel oppressed and depressed. We all have to adapt, though. We have to adapt our behaviors to survive in these environments. And what I mean by that is, well, maybe the bedroom you have to clear out everything and get help from family members, friends for one day. I got to get all this junk out of here and not bring junk back in, because I can't live with this and I can't clean it. So it's best to just have it somewhere else and close the door so I don't have to look at it. Again, that's just an example. Different cultures develop different characteristics, primarily because they've adapted to their environments. So we, in turn, can learn to adapt to our environments and move towards an environment that helps us feel less stressed, happier, more at ease, and helps us feel more motivated to act on our own behalf and to take care of ourselves. And then finally, there's the idea of collective care. And this moves away from the idea of self-care. There is a movement out there that says, self-care puts too much burden on the individual, and it doesn't recognize that we live with other people, that we are social beings. And our social circles may be very small, or they could be larger. It doesn't matter. We don't live in a bubble and in a vacuum. So the idea behind collective care is that we nurture the environments we live in and those around us, and which is hard when we're not well ourselves. We need more of the nurturing, right? Shifting from I need to look after myself to we need to look after one another. And we see well-being as a shared responsibility. So even though, like I said, I couldn't do some of the things I used to be able to do around the house, I could be conscious of what I was asking my husband to do. And I could look at him and his levels of energy and say, I need to I need to give him a break. I need to not ask him anything today. Or this week, I'm not gonna ask him to do stuff for me if I could do it myself, or if I can call my brother, or if I can call a friend. I'm gonna offload that on other people and give him a break. So you still can engage in collective care, even though you may have greater needs than the people around you. This idea has been tested, and it continues to be tested as the precautions and the mandates change. And one of your questions address that. And so I will talk about that. And so the idea of collective care, while I love it, I think it's wonderful. It means that we are all caring about each other. One of the things that I know is front and center on your minds and the minds of people living with COVID and who have had loved ones die from COVID is when we terminate things that are mandates, or the public health emergency, for example, then even when the mandates were there, you all know, I live in Texas. Masking was a huge deal in my area, and people weren't even doing it with the mandates. So the idea of collective care is an idea that some of us have and others do not, and that's really frustrating. So I would say for you all to start small, maybe start with that self-love, or start with that tending to basic needs, start with pacing, whatever resonated with you the most. Do what you can to feel safe. Continue with the protective measures that make you feel safe. You can't control everyone around you. You can't control your partner. You can't control it's out of your control. And so that desire to control or have people care about you in a way that makes sense to you, in a way that you would care for them, that will perhaps continue to disappoint you and make you feel awful, because we can't make people do that. I was at my doctor's office, my rheumatologist's office, and I had my mask on and they weren't masking. And the one thing the nurse said was, when she walked into the room, "Oh my gosh, would you like me to put on a mask?" And I said, "Yes." So I was grateful that she asked me. And I said, "Thank you so much for asking me," because that was a lot more than I think I would have gotten in other situations. But the truth is, we can only control ourselves. So use the protective measures that feel calming to you and help you stay safe. And that may mean that you are engaging in more protective measures that keep you isolated, keep you at home. It brings a different set of challenges to you, but you've got to first and foremost do those things that make you feel calm and safe. Begin with your immediate environment, like we talked about, your room or your home, your relationships. Start communicating with the people around you about what your needs are and what you can help contribute, no matter how small that is. And continue to seek support from others. What I noticed in my circle of friends was that some of my friends were really great at the practical things. I had one friend that bought me a walker and brought it over. I had another friend that cooked food for me on a regular basis and brought it over. And I didn't want to overstep my bounds with her. And I said, "Hey, there are weeks where I can do this, but there are weeks where I want to give Matt a break. So do you mind cooking for us that week?" And she was fine with that. I had friends that couldn't give me time, but they might buy me a gift card to a DoorDash. I had friends who were really good listeners, and I invited them over to talk once a month. And so finding the people that can support you in the ways that they can, and have realistic expectations around that too. Because then I had other friends that I've been very close to, and I could tell that if I talked about being sick, they got very uncomfortable and they didn't want to hear it. And then I didn't hear from them for a while. So I quit talking about it with them. I think it was their own level of comfort with illness. They just didn't have it. Move toward an interpersonal generosity through the practice of giving yourself. Give when you can, whatever that is, however small. Like I said, let people off the hook, or don't ask of them in a week where you might really need some additional help, but you can tell that they don't have the energy reserves themselves. And create spaces for healing and expression like this one. This is great. Yeah, So I'm gonna stop sharing my screen because I do want to get to some of the questions that I got. And I'm gonna pull these up real quick. And I also wanted to share my email address while I'm doing this, if anybody wants to reach out to me. My email is Stewart, STEWART, clinical consultants @gmail.com. Again, it's Stewart Clinical Consultants @gmail.com. So one of the questions was talking about how you can engage in self-care when your body is just not, it's not operating the way it used to, and it's also not the body you knew or you love. And I think that is where the self-love practice comes into play. You're literally getting to know yourself again. You don't know who you are because your brain and your body, it's all one thing. And when your body's like this foreign object that you're dealing with, you got to get to know it again. So a lot of the self-awareness tools that we talked about, listening to internal cues. If you are not engaged in a meditation practice, that may be something you want to look at doing. Meditation practices really help us move inwards and become self-aware of our breath and our body. So creating some awareness and getting reacquainted with your body is step one. But the self-love practices that Eileen Davidson was talking about, I think, are also part of that equation. And one of the questions was, I don't know where to start. I've been so overwhelmed for 3 years. I've lost so much. And the grief component, we run our grief group with bereaved individuals and with long haulers. And the topics are grief related. And for some long haulers, it's hard for them to connect to the grief piece that we talk about. But I do think it's important to recognize your losses and recognize that you all have lost a lot and that you are grieving. And it's not the same as when you lose a loved one. It's a different grief experience. But when we don't acknowledge our losses and actively grieve them, they stay with us and they don't get processed. So starting with acknowledging the losses you've experienced and feeling what you feel about that and being okay with that, having days where, I don't know what you all do. I used to call them my personal pity parties, where I literally would just sit in bed and cry all day. I'm like, I hate this. This is awful. I can't do the things I used to do. I'm in pain and I feel miserable. So I would get the stuff that's bad for me. I'd get like 3 bags of Milano cookies and my Diet Cokes, and I would watch bad movies all day and I would cry. I'd give yourself permission to feel lousy, because it's not easy dealing with what you all are dealing with. But starting small, starting those baby steps, pick any of the things that I talked about and start there. And again, I think that having the PowerPoint would be helpful for you all to have, so you can see what the points are. Yeah. And you can start one by one and going through that. Journaling is another tool that may not resonate with everyone, but if you can journal, you can even use, if writing is hard for you, Google Voice or Google Docs. If you can get a free account, and they've got now a really good dictation capability on it. And so you can click on the microphone and I started journaling that way when I was having a hard time writing. It was great because I could talk and express myself and I could see my words. It's not perfect, but their dictation tool is pretty good. So you can use that. And I think that several of the other questions dealt with talking about your relationships with others. And that is a huge one. I hope that some of the slides that I shared with you all about relationships might be helpful. Some of those things, that's complex, and that's huge because relationships are complex and they're different. With all of your relationships are different. My relationship with my husband is different than the one with my mom, than my brother and my friends. And really in mitigating all of that, finding the people that you can talk to, recognizing the people that are your relationships are not healthy anymore. That's hard. That's another loss. You may have already lost friends, partners. And I'm so sorry for that, because I know that that's another, it's a loss that comes along. And sometimes there's this domino effect of what we call secondary losses of, I've already lost this person, I'm about to lose this person. And that's not easy. It's acknowledging those losses and seeking out new relationships, like the relationships that you've created on this platform, I think is helpful. And then talking to your friends, honestly, talking to your partners, honestly, about what your needs are, but asking them what we do tend to do that. I think, here's what I need from you. They have needs too, and trying to find a happy medium. And it's not always easy, but part of the conversation could be, I'm going to talk to you about what my new needs are. I want to hear what your needs are. And I also want to talk about what this process is going to be like. Maybe we should meet once a month and talk about how it's going and talk about how we're feeling about these things. Finding that friend, like I said, I had one really good friend who offered to come over and just let me talk. That was her gift to me, and it was huge. And then the friends that cooked for me, that was their way of showing their love for me. I want to cook for you. I want to cook for you and Matt. Friends who said, I don't have time to do, and she literally didn't. She has 2 kids. She's got a business she's running, but man, it was so helpful when she dropped off that walker. I was like, thank you so much. I can use that. So recognizing that people have gifts, you have gifts that you can give them, and they have gifts that you can give you. Tap into the right people for the right gift, so that none of them feel maybe like too much is on them. I think that those were the bulk of the questions, the relationship questions. How do I get started on all this, and how do I look at myself differently, and how do I love myself so that I can engage in self, there's some people hate this saying, I actually like it, the fake it till you make it. Because I do think there's something to it, that if you start engaging in self-care practices, they become self-affirming over time. They're good for you. They make you feel better in the moment, even if you don't feel it in the moment. Over time, if you practice it and you keep on going back to it, eventually it's going to lift your spirit, or it's going to lift your mood, even for a short time. So just commit to doing one thing on a regular basis to get your routine going. And a lot of that will be self-affirming.
I know there are a lot of folks who are working their way through the disability process. And so they are consistently being forced to reiterate, their limitations, how things are different, how they're not able anymore to do whatever it is they like to do. And that negativity is mandatory. You have to present that.
Yeah.
So the self-love is a lot harder for those people. I think it's wonderful to make a practice, a little habit, something that reaffirms that you're really just as good as you were before. It's just that you're different than you were before.
Yep.
To make you feel a little bit better about yourself. I love the idea of going and getting a bag of Milanos, but I'm a junkie for chocolate anyway.
Whatever works. Well,
right?
Not whatever. But yeah.
Maybe not habitually.
Yeah.
But something positive to kind of contradict the negative. I know that people struggle with that. You feel really down on yourself because you have to present yourself in a certain way so that you qualify. And I know.
Well, and unfortunately, and there may be a way to, and I don't know how you do this off the top of my head, but being very cognizant of that exercise, that this is an exercise I have to go to meet this, and this is not me. Right. This is what they need to hear in these moments, and going into a space where you kind of do some positive self-talk after those interviews, those depositions, whatever you're doing, so that you can counteract the impact of that.
Right. Yes. So important. And I like the saying that anything is hard with chronic illness, because it's true. Everybody struggles with something once you become chronically ill, and it may be different for each person, but there's always something that's a struggle.
Yep.
Yeah. So thank you for that. Thank you for sharing that.
Well, feel free, anyone, to reach out to me if you have any questions, and happy to do this again on a different topic. Just let Amanda know what you want to talk about.
I am sure we will. Thank you so much for your time, Amy. I know you're a busy
Thank
gal,
you.
so I really do appreciate it. And I'm going to just mention really quickly, because the support of others is important. For people who don't feel comfortable using the group or whatever, we do have the
Sure.
Brooke line. So that 1-844-BROOK-0 or 1-844-276-6530. That is a line long haulers can call that is staffed by long haulers, so that you can talk, interact, share how you're feeling, get that support from people who really truly do understand we are all there in the same spot. If you don't feel up to talking, if you don't feel like you're capable of vocalizing, you can always text. That works too. So you're not alone. You're never alone. It's just how you reach out to the people around you. So
That's tremendous.
it is
Love it.
what a great tool.
Yep.
And I'm really hopeful as well, people who are feeling up to it, if you would like to share what your experiences have been as well, we can always use people to take calls as well. Get in touch with Amanda, put something on the page or the group, a little message. We'll get to you and figure out how to get you going. So, all right, Amy, thank you again.
Thank you.
It was wonderful information. We're always happy to see you. I'm apologizing again for not being Amanda, but you compensated for my deficiencies, and I really appreciate it.
Oh, no, you were great. No.
So,
see, stop that negative self-talk.
okay, well, I appreciate you. I'll go back and read through those again.
Yeah, there you go.
And thanks so much.
Have a good day, everybody.
You too.